Hi, everyone. I'm just, thanks for joining. Just wanted to let everyone know we're going to wait until about 2 after to kick off, just to kind of give people time to get on the call, and then we'll get started. So sit tight. And if you have any questions that you already have keyed up and ready to go, then go ahead and throw those in the chat and we'll address them as we go along. Fernando, it looks like you have a question. You can throw it in the Q&A section or in the chat. Or if you want, I can unmute you and you can go ahead and ask it now. Hi, Fernando.
Hi, Vanessa. Nice
Hey.
to see you.
You too? Do you have any questions? I saw you raise your hand.
No, not really, but
Oh, okay.
I like it is interested in here, Emily and Phil.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
I'm here.
Cool. Great. Well, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. For me too.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Just appreciate, again, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. We are here to talk about circularity in solar and talk about trash or getting rid of trash. So I just kind of want to go in a little bit. Let's talk through our agenda just to give you an idea what our plan is, where we're going to go today. So we're going to start off with some introductions. We're going to introduce both Emily, thank you for joining us today, and Philip, thank you also for coming and being part of this discussion. And we're gonna introduce the two of them. They're going to tell you a little bit about their background, and then we're going to kind of introduce also this whole discussion of waste and why really it even needs to be a topic of conversation. And then from there, we'll have the discussion between Emily and Philip, and they'll share their expertise. And we want to make sure we have you leave with some action items, so that way it's not just oh my goodness, here's a big problem, but there's nothing we can do about it, because there are in fact specific actions that we can all take to help change the course of the industry. And then at the very end, we'll have time for audience questions. Now, I did want to give everyone a heads up. If you have questions throughout the presentation that you have for Emily or for Philip or both, you can throw them in the Q&A section or in the chat, and I'll go ahead and let Emily and Philip know what those questions are. So feel free to just, anytime you have a question, throw it out there, and we will we'll go from there. So as we, just to kind of get you started, Emily, if you would go first, and then Philip follow that up, and just kind of give us an idea of who you are, your background, and why you're doing what you're doing.
Sure. Well, thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Philip, for inviting me to this webinar. I feel that this is such a relevant and important topic in our industry. So I'm glad that we are tackling it and discussing it and having good conversations about this topic, because I think those that are attending and those are participating, we kind of know there's a problem and we've got solutions. So just to give you a little bit of my background, for those who may not know me, I am the CEO of Green Clean Solar. I started this company a year and 4 months ago. And prior to this company, I had a mechanical commercial installation company since 2016. So I had a partner where we were building commercial job sites all over the country. We were doing carports, rooftops, and solar farms. And so we would travel and we would build these systems all over the country, worked with universities, some of the top corporate companies, well-known names that we did solar projects for, and built it up. And then in 2019, before the pandemic, we decided to sell it. And so we sold it to an oil gas pipeline individual. He wanted to get out of that space and move into renewables. So we worked together for 2 years and started to take on very large utility scale projects. And through those 2 years, I like boots on the ground. I talk to my crew, I hear what's going on. And I realized that we were building these amazing projects and we were taking all the waste, putting it in containers and hauling it to the landfill. And it really bothered me. Like, I thought, this is not making sense. It's kind of counterintuitive. Here we are building these great systems and powered by the sun, but then we're literally turning around and filling the earth with all this waste. And the waste included broken solar panels, cardboard, wooden pallets, plastic, metal, everything that comes from building a site was literally just getting dumped. So that really motivated me to start Green Clean Solar, because I knew it couldn't just be a problem for me and my company. I knew that this was going across the entire industry. And it's kind of like this secret, like, oh my gosh, let's just kind of wipe it away. Let's not talk about it. But I knew people wanted to have options. So I wanted to come up with a company that would really collaborate the recycling industry, the waste industry with the solar industry. Two very separate, different industries, but a lot of benefits to bring these two together. So my mission is to be able to go to these job sites, provide solutions for these big companies that didn't have any solutions before. And so now we've been in business for over a year. We are all over the country, collecting, separating, and picking up material from these big, large utility scale projects and partnering with recycling companies that have the technology, that has the resources to make a difference. So I'm really excited to be here to talk about this. I know many of you who may not be familiar with the circular economy. So hopefully you'll get some great insights today on what Phil and I have seen out in the job sites and what's happening. And again, to provide you with some options and solutions. So thank you again for having me.
Thanks, Emily.
Well, of course, we're happy to have Emily here with us. Super excited about the conversation today. So, and thank you all for joining. I tell the audience on each one of these webinars, whether it's in person or online, these panel discussions, it's very encouraging to see. It seems like every one of these we do, there's more and more people showing up, which to me means that we're spreading the awareness, which is a great thing. And one of the keys to really making a change in our industry. So to introduce myself, I'm Philip Schwartz, CEO and co-founder of PV Palette. My background, I'm a mechanical engineer by degree, and I've been in the renewables space for my entire career. I started off back in the mid 2000s working on ethanol projects as an engineer. Transitioned into solar thermal projects with a large multinational EPC company, working on projects down in Arizona and California, and then transitioned into solar PV as the solar thermal market kind of, as many of us know, kind of died out over time with the advancements in PV technology. So did that for a number of years. At one point, I branched out and started my own consulting company where I was providing project development design services to project developers, essentially doing all their front-end technical due diligence and preliminary designs to get their projects ready for bid and interconnect queues. That ultimately took me back to my roots in Missouri, where I met my co-founders along the way while I was working on some renewable natural gas projects. I was wanting to install solar on those projects, and there was a solar installation business in northern Missouri run by these two guys who are now my co-founders. they were, experiencing the same things we all are. At the end of every job, they were left with dumpsters full of trash and broken panels and people getting injured, really due to the packaging that these products were coming in. In the ag industry, which was their background, my co-founder's background, that industry had at one point used to use single-use sacks for shipping seed, and they had very similar problems: damaged product, people getting hurt, single use, lots of waste. And that whole industry has adopted what's called a Pro Box, which is a reusable bin for shipping seed. So they said, why can't we do that in solar? This industry's done it. A number of other industries have switched to reusable packaging. So why can't we as a green industry do the same thing? We came up with this back of the napkin concept back in 2019 for a PV pellet. And I loved it. I love gadgets. I love the fact that it's collapsible and it's this really innovative system that's really more than a pallet. So I was excited about it. And when I started crunching the numbers, that's what really blew me away and opened my eyes to the fact that there's a real opportunity for change here in this industry. And Vanessa's going to go into a few of those numbers before we start the open discussion. But anyway, that was back in 2019. We spent a couple of years getting product developed, having our injection molds made, and we brought product to market back in June of last year, which seems like an eon ago, but also wasn't that long ago at the same time. So, and then last but not least, I'll say, bringing that product to market, we're talking to all these distributors and installers and going in their warehouses. And my eyes were quickly open to the fact that it's not just the module packaging, it's all the packaging in our industry. It's very poor quality, single use. So we've quickly adopted the mentality that we are as a company on a mission to eliminate the waste from the packaging side of our industry. Now we offer a full product line of other reusable containers beyond just the PV pallet. So we can ship inverters, junction boxes, wire coils, you name it, in reusable packaging, which is what our industry needs to do. So there we go.
Thanks, Philip. So let's talk a little bit about just Emily and Philip both mentioned that they have seen problems, and we have actually scaled up some of that math. I'm sure many of our attendees have been on sites, seen the trash, seen the problems, but when you actually start adding it up and equating it to the global issue, the solar industry is creating 1.1 billion pounds of wood waste every year, just on the wood pallets that modules are shipped on. And we have found that in conversations that we've had, anywhere from 5, even upwards of 7% of modules are broken before they're ever even installed, which if you take the 2021 installations and 5% of those modules, you get 21 million broken modules every single year, which is just a significant amount of preventable waste that we really as an industry need to address. And then you have the whole end of life conversation, which has been a really hot topic of late, where you have 78 million metric tons of solar panels coming to end of life by 2050. So we essentially have 25 years to figure out how we can responsibly dispose of those 78 million metric tons, which is equivalent to 1 million American football fields if you just laid them all out. And right now, as of today, which is why we need to have this conversation, only 10% of solar modules are recycled, meaning 90% of those solar modules that are either broken before installation, decommissioned, ruined by a natural disaster, just go to a landfill. And there's so much value in each one of those modules, as I know Emily will talk about. So that's why we're so glad you're here, and we're so glad to be part of this discussion and just really help kind of change the narrative for the solar industry so we can truly be a green industry. So
I want to chime in real quick,
Yeah, go for
on those first 2 bullet points too. Those are numbers at our current industry clip. That's what we're doing today. And we all know that are in this industry is growing immensely, especially over the next 10 to 20 years. Those numbers all scale. Unless we make a change, they scale linearly right alongside the industry growth. So it's only going to get worse from a waste challenge standpoint.
Yeah, so that's the real bad news. Now we're going to move into some good news of ways that we as an industry can change this narrative and change the trajectory change what our legacy will be. So if we want to kind of start off with first Emily, then Philip, if you want to kind of explain, I know you did a little bit already, some of the waste issues that you see on site. You know, we'll kind of keep a little bit more with the bad news and the current status quo, and then we'll move into what those action items are. So go ahead, Emily.
Sure. So what's interesting is, you know, again, seeing those numbers, they're shocking. Because I remember like back in 2016, when I first started to get into solar, you know, we were doing 1 megawatt, and sometimes we would get 3 megawatt. We're like, yay, you know, that's such a big, you know, because it's like 1 megawatt is like compared to 1 football field. So we were doing 2-3 megawatts, and we were so excited, and our crew was excited. Fast forward to 2023, we're seeing 100 megawatts, you know, 200, 300 megawatts. So our clients are absolutely getting into larger utility scale projects, right? They're acquiring larger pieces of land, and they're, you know, building massive utility scale projects. Well, what comes behind all these large utility scale projects is more waste, you know, and one thing I see, you know, all these great new panels come into the job site, and my mind is like, oh my gosh, look at all that waste behind it. Because right now, the manufacturers that support our industry, they really haven't thought about the packaging, right? Because their goal is to, you know, sell their racking, their modules. They want to get it out, you know, they want to get it out to the site. They want to, you know, they're not thinking of the back end problem. So what we are seeing is that, you know, there's some core pieces of waste that we see on all job sites. You have the broken panels, you have the cardboard, because all the panels come in cardboard typically. You have plastic wrap, you have metal straps, plastic straps. So there's a lot of variety when it comes to the packaging of the panels as well as the racking. So what we try to do, and we've been very successful, is we have a system where when all these panels come onto the job site, and the installers are starting to unwrap it, right? We have a crew right behind them that is literally picking it up, and then they take it to a lay down yard area, and we're separating it. So this is really the first step where we can provide a solution to all this waste, is separating it, right? Because in the recycling world, you have core materials. You know, if you think of your household, right? You have glass, you have plastic, you have paper. It's just like this out in the solar field. So, but we just do it on a huge scale. So one of the things that we really try to do is separate it. And so our guys who are out on the field, we have containers, specific containers that we label, like the cardboard goes in this container. The wooden pallets will have to go in this container. The plastic goes in here. The metal, you know, chunks go in this container. So we try to separate as much as we can. And then we partner with local recyclers. So that's one of the things that we really try to support, is the local community, is that, you know, there may be some existing partners that are out there that really didn't even know all this waste from the solar industry is coming into their town. So we actually provide a lot of jobs when we come in and do our recycling, because we want to partner with those local companies. And so they'll take the pallets and they'll shred them into, you know, mulch. Some of them will take it and use it and make it into pulp and make boxes again from it. So that's been one success story from us. We've had a project in Hawaii where they're taking the cardboard and they're using that for landscaping instead of chemical sprays. They're using that in their landscape installations. So as we build our business, we are really finding out some great partners that have not necessarily been in the solar industry, but want to work with us and provide us with solutions. So we're really excited about that. You know, yes, there's a problem, but I think with Phil and I talking about this is that we have solutions. We can help with the packaging industry. And if it is coming in this way, let's deal with it. How can we deal with it on the best level? But, you know, one of the things that we shared with you earlier is we do need to educate. We need to talk to the packaging companies to really think about redesigning it. So when it gets to the job site, that it's material that we can either send back and reuse, or we can repurpose it. So it's a conversation that has to be literally from the top organizations to be like, look, we want to get material. And I tell this to a lot of the sustainability directors, like, you have a huge influence on what you buy for your companies. You know, you may want to go with company B because they have material that can recycle versus A, who we can't recycle any of it, you know? So ask these questions when you're procuring so much amount of material to say, hey, what are you doing with this? Can it be circular instead of a one-time use when it gets out to the field? So, you know, and we get it. We know you have to package the glass, right? That you can't not package it because there's, you know, breakage that we talked about. So we get it, but just think through the way that you want to package it. Like one of the pictures that we're looking at now, there's this green colored saran wrap or whatever you want to call it. So we had an entire container, 40-yard container of just this green plastic. The recycler gets it. Emily, it is so hard for us to recycle this. Instead of $900, it's going to cost us over $1,000 to process this because there's a dye in it. It's not pure, you know? So if the packaging company would go in and say, hey, we're going to change the color of our plastic to clear. Well, guess what? Then our recyclers will recycle it better because they have the technology that can do it. You know, one story I'll share with, I'm so glad that the Coca-Cola company took all their Sprite plastic bottles instead of green, they turned them into clear because they knew it was easier to recycle that way. So again, all these things we are learning on the job site when we're out there and also working with the recyclers to say, hey, they come back to us. They said, you know, we can't take these wooden pallets because they've got big metal brackets on it. And I'm like, you're right, we can't shred those. So we go back to the manufacturer and say, look, consider taking those brackets off, maybe use thinner nails that can be shredded up because otherwise it's going to mess up their machine and we can't recycle it. So little steps like this in our industry can really make a big difference.
Yeah. Philip, do you have anything to add to that? If not, I would say, yeah, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of what we do on the packaging side that ties in with what Emily does in terms of site waste removal and reduction and recycling. But what I encourage people to do is educate and quantify. I mean, that's kind of in my mind the first two steps of making the change, because you know, there's more waste associated with the packaging than just the packaging itself. You know, it's equipment breakage, like we've talked about, because the packaging is poor quality, and that leads to another entirely separate waste stream that Emily's trying to deal with firsthand. But even beyond that, there's other waste associated with the standard wood pallets and cheap ways of packaging. There's shipping inefficiencies because in many cases you can't stack these things that come on wood pallets more than 1 or 2 units high. So in some cases you've got trucks that are half empty going down the road because you can't do a double stack in a truck. A lot of reusable packaging is actually about optimization of logistics, and you can accomplish that when you've got more robust reusable packaging. There's field inefficiencies, right? So every time you're dealing with all this waste, you're dealing with equipment breakage. That means you have downtime on site, and all that downtime is costing you money. There's also, of course, safety issues. I mean, you can see it there in some of these photos. You've got 3 foot by 6 foot modules that are leaning over 50 pounds a piece. that load right there is upwards of 2,000 pounds that could fall over on somebody and get somebody seriously hurt. In some cases, we've heard of people getting killed actually by pallets that have fallen over and equipment falling on people. It's a real issue and people don't want to talk about it. So we have to continue the discussion. But in all, you know, safety aside, that's its own very important issue. But all of this ultimately leads to cost. And that's, you know, at the end of the day, that's what drives business is economics. And all these things, you know, we did a great case study with one of our customers. And what I love about that case study is they were having breakage problems. And they switched to a PV pallet, and we did a great job of reducing that. But they took the approach, when they looked at a broken module, they didn't say it's just the cost of the module. They looked at the total life cycle cost of the effect of that broken module in terms of having to replace the module, having to get a new shipment to site. What is the downtime on the site while people are waiting for this new shipment to show up? What are the administrative costs and having to have their procurement team order these new panels? So when they ultimately ran those numbers, and everybody has different variables, and you know that this number will be different for everybody depending on your operations, but their total cost was 4 times the cost of the panel itself.
Wow.
And that's the kind of stuff you need to look at when you're really talking about reusable packaging, is what is the total life cycle cost of this, not just the CapEx.
Right. And where reusable packaging really comes in is not only in cost savings, but really in that waste prevention, you know. So Emily does a great job there. Some waste can't be prevented, but a lot of it can. And so if we find that really good middle ground where we're preventing as much as possible and then recycling the rest, we'll definitely be in a lot better position than we are right now. So we do you want to talk about we haven't published this case study yet, but we found that with one customer, they actually were able to break even after just one job with using reusable packaging. So there's a significant ROI there, as well as a significant planet benefit. So
that's what's beautiful about what we're doing is, you know, oftentimes the sad reality is going green costs more. But in this case, it doesn't if you just look at it the right way with the holistic view in mind.
Yeah. So Emily, I have a question for you. You mentioned like looking at the color of things. What other ways can recycling be maximized at a solar site? How can people pre-plan so that way they know that at the end of the installation, they'll be able to maximize the recycling when they clean up their site?
Right. Well, that's a good question, Vanessa. And what I'd like to share with you is one of the things that we're doing right now with our customers is we try to be proactive. Like if you know you are having projects in your pipeline and you know the size of them, you know the construction schedule, because, you know, when you're out there driving piles, you're not going to have a lot of waste, right? It's usually just some garbage bags of some stuff. But once you look at your construction schedule and you see, okay, for 5 months, we are installing solar panels, that's going to be the tip of your productivity. So to be efficient, you want to plan ahead. And these are things that we are helping at Green Clean Solar is we do a lot of research as far as getting things in place before you get to that peak of your installation and having to deal with all the packaging. So instead of being very reactive, we say, let's be proactive, let's plan, let's get things in place. So when we show up on site, we got this, you know, system already in place. We know what to do and we know how to handle it. But it definitely takes time, resources, money, you know, to put that plan in place. But that is one thing where I have seen a very success story is to know, you know, what kind of racking, what kind of panel, you know, other components that are coming in, and let's plan ahead and get this executed. So we're not scrambling at the end, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because it's very overwhelming. You know, we get calls and people are stressed because they get overwhelmed. They don't realize, what can happen, like these fallen over panels. What are they going to do? They got to haul them out, right? And just, dispose of them. And so we can put all that up front, share with them estimates. I mean, that's not always concrete, but we can say, look, here's the funds, here's the resources you're going to need for this project, or here's the money that you're going to need for the end of life too. Think of that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Anything to add, Philip?
Sorry, it's muted. No, I think that covers it pretty well, honestly. Yeah, so.
Yeah. We do have a question right here. It says, if the recycled components are worth so much money, why does it still cost $30 a module to recycle? And do you project that this will change?
So there's always a cost to the recycling of modules, and I have seen them all over the board, and it can go from, $15 up to $25. And the reason why there's such a big expense is because everyone processes it differently and has different equipment and different resources. So depending on where you are in the country can also affect the cost of these panels. And so when they get the panels, you have labor who is unloading them, and you have equipment that is processing it. And sometimes they have to pay to get rid of some of those materials. So it's not always 100%. Now, the good thing I will share, like with the metal, we have found that there's rebate sharing when it comes to metal, because they can melt that down. They've been doing these for decades, right? So that's not a new concept. So the metal definitely has a rebate to it. Cardboard is starting to get rebates for that, especially if there's big producers of new boxes. They want old cardboard. So we've seen rebates with cardboard. We haven't seen anything rebates with the wooden pallets. That's just a cost because of the equipment and the shredder and the resources to take it. And then now the panels, if they are from a decommissioning site, we partner with companies and tell them, here's the brand, here's the wattage. And most of the time, those panels, if they're low wattage, they're going to go to third world countries, because it's very difficult to put them back into our economy, because then you're going to need low performing combiner boxes, low inverters. They have to be able to work with these low wattage panels. And so with all the advancements and the new technology, it's a very small market. I do work with universities and nonprofits that do want some of these end of life panels that are not broken. So we will partner with them and send it to them. But there's always a cost to recycle solar panels.
But there are companies, correct me if I'm wrong, like Solar Cycle, who are working on and other companies like them, working on increasing the efficiency of recycling. So that way that cost will continue to lessen. And then those valuable materials that are within the modules that can be recycled, that can be reused, as the industry scales, in order to really meet the demand, we'll have to use what's in those solar panels, right? So I mean, I would assume that as demand grows, the cost will lessen.
It will. I think it will too, because we're scaling and there's so much. But here's one of the challenges I have heard recently is that, let's say there's a company that wants the glass, right? They can repurpose that into different byproducts. Well, we have literally heard from those companies that take it that they're maxed out. They're like, we have enough, for the next 6 months. So that's a challenge. If we have a byproduct and we can sell it, there's so much of it that some of these end users are like, okay, we're getting so much from you. We don't know what else to do with it. So we have to find other avenues to take those minerals and, put it back in the economy. But it's hard. It's going to be a hard road to find those buyers. And if we find those buyers, you know, do they have the capacity to take as much as we can give to them?
Right, right. So we just have to keep scaling that. Philip, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, you know, one comment I'll make, and this is kind of outside of my bailiwick, but this came up on a panel I was on recently, and we talk about shipping low wattage old modules to these third world countries and think that we're doing a really good thing, which we are, but the downstream effect of that is what that means is now we're shipping all of this equipment that is going to be waste someday to countries that have even less infrastructure to deal with all of that waste. So it's you know, it's a good thing, but there's also side effects from it that we're all going to have to deal with down the road. So and again, that's totally out of my realm of expertise, but it was just kind of eye-opening when I heard that.
Sure.
I'll talk about real quick on the wood pallet side. You mentioned there's no credits for that, for those wood pallets for recycling. Not only that, what we found is that there are companies out there that will take back wood pallets, recycle and refurbish them. There's a few challenges, if not non-starters in our industry with that. One is that our pallets are not a standard size, right? They're 7 to 8 feet long by 4 feet wide, whereas a standard pallet's more 45 by 48. So they're not a normal size. And because they are such low quality, these recycling and refurbishment wood pallet companies don't even want our pallets in most cases. I can think of one in particular. There's a company down in Georgia that does exactly that, recycles, refurbishes. He got a call for 30,000 wood pallets on a job site that they were trying to get rid of, and he had no interest in taking them because he can't do anything with them. They're made out of particle board. They're all dilapidated and falling apart. So that's a challenge in and of itself. And then I'll toot our horn a little bit on the PV pallet and reusable packaging side, is that the beauty of our products is that they are made from recycled plastic in the first place. So we are removing plastic that would otherwise go into landfills to make our products. And at end of life, after dozens and dozens, if not more uses, they are recyclable at end of life. And we will actually give a credit back to our customers to reclaim those pallets, so we can take the hardware out, reuse the hardware, and then grind up the plastic and remold it. So, you know, the circularity there in reusables is just phenomenal compared to what we're doing today.
For now, Emily, when both of you probably can comment on this, but when you're cleaning up a solar site, when you're taking those broken modules, the unused modules, or even decommissioning a site, does the type of pallet that you put those on matter? Or can you just take kind of any random pallet that you have left over on the site?
Well, we kind of deal with what we have. And what's great is Rodney is on this call, and he's the guy that has boots on the ground for Green Clean Solar. And he could probably share a few real life situations on what happens with using wooden pallets on, you know, on a site to recycle the solar panels. So Rodney, can you share a little bit of what you see and what happens when we try to move these solar panels to the trucks?
Yes, ma'am. The pallets are horrible. It's pretty much, I mean, you can load them up, but it's still hard to move. For instance, job in New York, they had pallets there for us. I guess it was the pallets that the panels originally came on. The pallets was horrible, but I mean, at the end of the day, we got them loaded. We loaded them on the truck, but it was hard for them to take off. Only thing I can really say is the pallets, the wood pallets, I don't think they're no good. I don't know, but they're horrible.
And I, you know, and I really value what Rodney has to say, because he's, you know, him and his crew are the ones that are dealing with these crumbling wooden pallets. You know, I'm sure that those pallets have been out there since last year, right? And so Now they found us, Green Clean Solar. We are a company that can recycle those panels. And so they call us. So they come out, we go out there, and we're dealing with months, if not years, old pallets. And we got to move, how many pounds was it, Rodney? Like, I think we had 30,000 pounds of broken panels on this job site.
Yes, man. We had to get them loaded up. We had to get them out of there.
Yeah. So, back to what Philip said, as far as safety, this is a huge problem that, I don't want my guys working on broken panels when our job is to move these broken panels, and all we have is these crumbling wooden pallets to use. So if we had PV pallet, because, I'm a huge fan of you guys, if we had those pallets out there, those guys could be knocking it out, strapping it in the flatbeds and getting it out of there. I mean, it makes their job actually more efficient and faster if we had good quality pallets.
Yes, ma'am.
Now,
So-
Philip, we have a question about, do you have challenges accommodating growing module sizes with the existing PV pallet design?
Yeah, if all the module manufacturers could just agree to standardize, that would be amazing. But there's a couple ways that I'll comment on that. First of all, are the PV pallet Series X, which is our flagship product that you see behind me right there. That pallet is adjustable, 63.5 to 83.5 interior length. So that accommodates most M6 solar cells. There's also ways you can use this without the sidewalls that will accommodate some of the M10 solar panels. And then beyond that, we've got a couple things. One, we have a way that we can basically extend the Series X because it is reinforced with 2 lengths of 2x4 tube steel, which essentially gives us a modular rail that we can work with. So we can actually extend the length of these Series X pallets today. And then down the road by Q1, Q2 of next year, we have another product in development that will also be able to fit the M10 cells. So yeah, we've got a number of ways we can address those larger modules. Some of those available today.
Now for offsetting costs, if each of you could kind of talk to, I know Emily, you've mentioned that recycling versus landfill, sometimes that cost can kind of be offset. And Philip, I know you've talked about reusable packaging offsetting the, even like the labor and the disposal cost of that. So Philip, why don't you go first and kind of speak to that? And then Emily, any additional comments that you have?
Sure. Yeah, one of our challenges that we face when we're trying to, get customers to implement reusable packaging, CapEx always comes up. There's no doubt about it. A reusable package is going to be more expensive CapEx wise than a cheap wood pallet. And that's not going to change no matter how much we'd like it to. But what we have done is developed a very robust and detailed ROI calculator. So we do take a consultative approach with our customers. We know that every project, every warehouse, every operation in our industry has its own unique variables. So there is no cookie cutter, answer to this is going to pay back in 4 uses because it's different for everybody. But we have built out a calculator so we can take all of your inputs based on the way you operate today and compare those side by side with the cost of wood pallet. And we can show you, what the number of uses and your payback period, and then also your long-term savings over the course of, say, 5 years or however you think the longevity and depreciation is within your specific organization. And what I'll say about that too is it does take that holistic approach. We're not trying to leave any stone unturned. So we make sure that we're counting all of the real costs on both sides of the fence. So that's on the wood pallet side, that includes all the CapEx and the recurring CapEx, because every job you're buying more pallets, whether it's a line item to you or if it's banked into the module cost, the cost is real. And it calculates all the recurring CapEx, all the disposal costs on our side of the fence. It counts for that initial CapEx, all the shipping legs, cleaning, refurbishment, and then also you get baked back into there the reclaim credits and depreciation that you can take because they're now assets and not line item expense. So we put all that into this calculator. In almost every scenario that we've run, we've seen the payback of the PV pallets and reusable containers within 2 to 7 uses. And then every use thereafter is savings to you as a customer. And that, that hasn't changed. So it's pretty remarkable. And another really crazy thing is some of those inputs that you think would have a big impact on the overall calculation, like shipping costs, CapEx, they actually don't move the needle as much as you would think. CapEx, for example, it's a one-time CapEx. So yeah, it may sound expensive if you just compare CapEx to CapEx versus wood, but when you consider that's a one-time CapEx and not in every project CapEx, that goes away. And then another thing on the shipping side, people talk about we have to get these back and pay for all these return shipments. If you actually run the numbers, the number of shipments for a wood pallet, even if it's just wood pallet to manufacturer to job site to disposal, the total number of shipments actually isn't far off from a reusable number of shipments. So long story short, we've got all that. And if you guys, anybody on this call has questions or is curious about what the impact would be in their operations, we're happy to sit down and run through those numbers with you.
And you've run those numbers, correct me if I'm wrong, on all different people throughout the supply chain, right? Like it's not just manufacturers or just fill in the blank. That cost savings is really throughout the entire process, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it accounts for the cost throughout the entire supply chain. In some cases, you may need to get creative with your suppliers or downstream customers to try to shift costs around to make the numbers, to basically capture all that value. But it's all there line itemed out. And again, we can work with you to say what is actually direct costs and how can we capture some of these other costs that may not be direct to us.
Right. Emily, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I'm going to share some numbers with you. So let's say you have 10,000 pallets on a site, which is kind of normal. You may have more, may have a little bit less. We can fit approximately 64 of these large size solar panel pallets in a 40-yard container. Okay, so 64. So if you take 64 divided by 10,000, you have 156 containers. Okay, 156 containers times, and I'm going to make it low, which is sometimes more in different parts of the country, $500 per container to haul it. That's $78,000 you're spending on throwing away 10,000 wooden pallets. So Philip, let's compare your prices. Like if you were to use your recyclable pallets, what would be the cost savings? Obviously we wouldn't be thrown away. We wouldn't have 156 hauls, right? So hauls, you've got carbon emission, you've got, the recycler that's shredding it on the back end. But $78,000, what could you do with $78,000? How many recyclable pallets could you buy for that?
Oh, you're muted. There we go.
You can buy quite a few reusable pallets. I don't know the answer off the top of my head to give you that payback period, but it's there. And that's exactly a great example of one of those costs that goes into our calculator. And it also ties into what I said about the number of shipments, because we can fit 130 collapsed PV pallets in a 53-foot drive-in. And you're saying you can only fit 64 in a 40-yard container. So that's exactly what I mean by the number of shipments actually, in most cases that I've seen, is actually slightly less with a PV pallet when you crunch the numbers.
Yeah. Great. Well, we're going to move on from this discussion into kind of talking about how, as an industry, we can change the narrative. And, we talked about the problem. We've talked about different ways that it can be handled. So we're going to kind of wrap it up with that and then move to questions. So, Philip, if you want to kind of address this slide here and talk to that.
Yeah, I think overall what we're driving toward is circularity in our industry, and it's incredibly important for a green industry to truly be green and not just generate green power, but actually have green job sites and waste free. What I love about this, and I really just saw this, not this graphic, but the 5 R's for the first time not very long ago. And I think we probably all grew up hearing reduce, reuse, recycle, right? That's baked into just about everybody's brain. And I think at this point, we all know that makes sense to do. What I really think is neat about the 5 R's is refuse and repair, or sometimes I refer to repair as reuse, or I'm sorry, repurpose. And that is what we talked about on the front end, is we all have a choice here as an industry to select who we work with. And I would challenge the people on this call to start making it a priority to work with companies that have true circularity based into their products offerings. And that includes packaging, end of life, all of it. So we have a choice, and we can help make change in the industry by making the right choices. And then on repair and repurpose, things aren't single use. Maybe we want to think they are, but in many cases you can fix things, you can reuse them. One example of that we've seen, that we do personally in our warehouse, is, when we first launched PV Pallet, we had a bunch of prototypes and samples made. We've taken those samples and turned them, cut off the tops of the walls and turned them into modular shelving units in our warehouse. Whereas we could have just thrown them out. So, I think just taking more initiative on refusing and more initiative on finding creative ways to repurpose and repair is very critical to the overall 5 R's that we're looking at here.
And Emily, you also kind of, with the end of when you do job cleanups, you not only do the recycling part of things, but you also send it off for repair and reuse, both modules and pallets and things like that, correct?
We do. We try to partner with companies that, and I've followed trucks with our material because I'm like, I want to see what they're really doing with it. So we filter out and work with companies that we know on the back end is reusing it, repurposing, like Philip said. We love to share those stories with you because they're out there, and that is our mission at Green Clean Solar. Is yes, we're doing a good thing, but we love these stories, and we love to be able to hear what is happening to a lot of this material. So that's kind of been our focus. And I think, the more we can share success stories of what we were doing, even with your product and how you've saved clients money, or, how we work with, the partners and how we're able to find solutions, which otherwise would have never, ever have been a solution or an option for them. So again, hearing these stories, they're great success stories. I love to know if anybody else has these great stories that's going out there, share them with us, promote it on LinkedIn. We'll support you. But I know there's a lot of great things that are happening when it comes to these 5 R's that we're talking about.
And, just kind of to segue into, like, here are the action items that we kind of want you as an audience to take away. Talking about, I think Philip's going to go over the summary, and then Emily, if you want to add in any of that.
I'll hit the first two because they're right in my wheelhouse. But in terms of quantifying the costs, obviously we can help you guys do that. But step one of that is kind of taking the blinders off within your own organization, asking questions, and really getting the holistic view of what your packaging and end of life plans are costing you as a company. And then considering the packaging, again, from what can it do from your project and company overall, not just what is the CapEx expense. There's a lot of other benefits, some of which we didn't even hit on today, but from switching to reusables, such as asset tracking, knowing where your cargo is at any given time, optimizing your shipping costs. There's a lot to do there on the packaging side that can improve your operations. I'll let Emily hit on the site cleanup.
Yep. So what I try to share with my customers is to come up with the goal, right? What is your end goal? If you've never recycled anything before, do 10%, take maybe one material and make a change. I've been at a job site where this lady decided to change all the plastic bottles to aluminum water bottles. And so we were able to take those bottles that tend to be all over the job site and put them in our metal recycling bin. So just if you take these small steps, whether it's 10%, 20%, and I know there's some companies out there that have what's called a zero waste goal. That's fantastic. Like if you want to go and say, hey, we are going to recycle everything, that is fantastic. But in reality, sometimes you can't really do that just because of the limited resources, but definitely plan and have a goal and then track it. And that's one of the things we do in our services is we track everything. The hauls, the tonnage, everything and where it's going. We provide those metrics. So you can go back and say, hey, this last project on a 50 megawatt or 100 megawatt, we were able to recycle, 16 tons worth of material. So again, have a goal in mind and measure it. Like, how are you doing at the end of these projects? And you may find that you're exceeding your goals because you have this implemented.
Right.
And then the other thing, spreading the word. When I see these projects and I go in some of these big, large EPCs, this may be the very first site that they've ever even thought about recycling. Well, guess what? I'm getting a call because they've got another site that they want to do the same thing with. So I love to see and spread the word of success stories and share with them that, hey, you can use this option. You can go and partner with this company and the word will spread within your company, but it does have to start from the top. You have to have leaders that embrace this recycling concept and let it trickle down, because the people that are out in the field, they're the ones that see it. They want to have a solution, but it's got to be, kind of implemented, and you got to have leaders within your organization that really embrace this. And then they'll start talking about it. They'll start marketing it. They'll start reporting this in their ESG reports, right? So again, spreading the word is very key. And then the collaboration. We get so excited in our team when we find a partner that's like, yes, we can do this for you. We can help you, because it will take a village. It's not just my company. We got to partner with PV Pallet. We've got to partner with one of the large cardboard manufacturer, all these partners that we gain. It's a win-win situation. We got to collaborate. We can't just do this on our own. We really have to have strong partners, whether you're in Texas or whether you're in New York. We've got to collaborate and come together and make a difference in our industry and be happy and share these success stories that look what we're doing. So I just love these partnerships that we're creating, love the synergy. We go to these great solar conferences. I know we're not there at, Clean Power right now, but I'm sure there's a big trend and a big discussion about decommissioning and end of life and what are we going to do. It's great to collaborate and have these conversations.
Yeah, Philip, you have something else to say?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Emily said there too. In our industry, particularly when you're looking at the utility scale side, there's multiple large stakeholders involved in these projects. And the reality is, and at least in my opinion, we're not going to make significant change unless we stop working in silos and we start collectively with all parties involved in these projects, at least the major stakeholders, work together. I mean, so basically what I'm getting at is, if you have a project and the project owner has sustainability goals, as the EPC, they're dealing with all these waste and breakage challenges, and the module manufacturer has the power, or the distributor in some cases has the power to drive what the packaging looks like and what the ultimate waste that Emily has to deal with looks like. Get in a room together and let's say we all want to solve this problem collectively, and what that takes is just some creativity and doing things a little different than we're used to doing them. But until we start challenging ourselves as an industry, we're not going to see significant change.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, one customer that we work with is a manufacturer, and they work directly with the utility scale installation to make sure that that reusable packaging gets delivered directly on site. So then everybody sees the cost savings rather than just one particular entity. So like you said, the more we collaborate, the more we can make this a reality. I'm going to move on to questions now. I know we're kind of scooching up right against the time. If any of you want to hang on, we'll answer as many questions as we possibly can. We really appreciate everyone's time today. So I do have one question right off the bat is, are you, I think this question is probably for both of you, are you able to deliver measurable impacts, like sustainability impacts in a report for the projects that you do, Emily, or the projects that you do, Philip?
Yeah, I'll start. We can quantify all that. There's a few things that we can do to measure, including asset tracking is one of them. Working with your team to know what shipments are going out, when they're coming back, and what the cost offset is with that. And that's more on the operational cost standpoint. We also at PV Pallet, we're working on a full-blown life cycle analysis, so we can really quantify the carbon footprint and environmental impact improvements that you have by switching from wood pallets to reusables. We're running that LCA side by side with a wood pallet LCA, so we can really, not just from a cost side, but also from the environmental side, let you know what the improvements would be based on how many reusable containers you're using.
Yep. And what we do is we have daily reports on our job sites where we track everything. Again, what I said before, as far as all the material, how it's handled. And then we also have our haulers and recyclers send us the tonnage, how much it weighs, so we can literally put all these metrics together. And I've got a great team, Denise and Christina, that puts all this a summary, and we send it back to our customers to show this is what we did on a monthly basis. So we do that, daily, weekly, and monthly.
Cool. Now this is a question for Philip. Do you work with module manufacturers with modules that are manufactured overseas?
So we've talked to most, if not all, of the overseas international module manufacturers. The reality is with reusable packaging, it makes the most sense from an economic standpoint if it's being loaded and unloaded on the same landmass. When you start putting pallets on a container to go overseas, it sits on pallets for potentially months at a time, and that hurts the frequency of reuse, which it pushes out the payback period. The payback in some cases is still there, but it's just a longer payback period. So there are creative ways that we're looking at addressing that challenge, which I can't really go into detail about. So I guess I'll just say stay tuned on that. But for the meantime, we're really focused on the domestic manufacturers. The good thing is that because of the IRA and all the push for more domestic manufacturing, a lot of those suppliers are moving domestic, as well as their upstream suppliers as well. So there's a lot of opportunity here in the next few years to have a much more robust reusable packaging supply chain in our industry, just because of that domestic push.
Right. Does anyone else have any questions that they want to add? I know we've kind of used up our time, but we will definitely want to make sure we get to everyone's questions.
I would say maybe just, share with them. We'll follow up, if they think of something after the webinar, we can either Philip or I can follow up with an email and how they can contact us if they have more questions.
Yeah, perfect.
Absolutely.
I will send up a follow-up email to all attendees. I'll give you the full recording, so that way you can, kind of pull out key nuggets that you might be able to apply within your organization. And we'll send some additional resources as well as contact information for both Philip and Emily should you have any follow-up questions. So do you guys have any final nuggets of information that you want to pass along before we wrap this up?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. I'm glad this topic was of interest to you. And if there's anything we can do to help you, we are open. I do a lot of, questions and answering with people on the other side that are like, hey, what about this? What about that? So I am here for you. So love to help you in any way that I can.
I'll echo that. I appreciate everybody being here and thank you for your attendance. And it's just, again, very encouraging to see more and more people that are interested in what we're talking about today. Yeah, and don't hesitate to reach out. We've got a variety of ways we can address your packaging problems. And if it's not on our website, not off the shelf product, there's likely still a solution that we can come up with for you. So I think collectively we can all make a positive change in the industry. We just got to
I
push for it.
agree. Ditto. All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Philip, for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
My
everybody.
pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.